Hello and welcome to this COMP3218 game design and development video from the University of Southampton. Today we're going to be looking at some more of our students' courseworks. My name is Tom Blount, I'm one of the lecturers on the course, and today I am joined by...
Dan Hobson, I'm a demonstrator on the course.
Fantastic. Dan, could you tell us what we asked the students to do for this coursework?
Yeah, absolutely. So for this coursework, we want the students to produce a small game prototype, and we're interested in that game having a narrative engine or story engine. So there's a story that affects the gameplay, and the gameplay affects that story.
Brilliant. All right, without further ado, let's have a look at our first game. Okay, and our first game is Limbo, the border between life and death. So nice little title screen here. We've got play and quit. Let's try play. Aha. So we transition right into the game. We've got some nice...
You've got movement. I guess you have to guess the controls, but it's WASD or arrows.
Yes. How did you know? So we've got some sort of crackling firelight sounds, some footsteps, and a little bit of noise as they speak. So, welcome, traveller. Your death was truly tragic. Oh, that's one way to start. A little bit of medias res. What you're experiencing is a phenomenon known as the afterlife. Okay. Oh, I mean, it is called Limbo. Yeah, that's a good point. Send the lost souls of Limbo to their eternal peace, and we'll get a place in heaven. Do not be swayed by the Oni. He's planning something sinister. So we should immediately trust this monk, right? Oh, hello. Oh, the Oni has a slightly different voice.
Yeah. Helpful and hindrance NPCs.
Okay, so he's giving us the soul stealer, so we can steal everyone's souls and then gain and rule over this. And I'm sure he's completely trustworthy.
There's some nice prompting with the path taking you on the obvious route to visit each of those people.
So right mouse, torture purity, left mouse, stabby, stabby, stab.
You've got timer in the top right corner. It did start counting while you were still reading tutorial, but hopefully it's not such a tight timer that it's going to be...
Yeah, hopefully it adds like a little bit of tension, perhaps.
Yeah. So are these things attacking you? Are you fighting them off with the torch?
Yeah, I've taken a little bit of damage, but it seems to do a little bit of damage to them over time.
Is there any information designed for showing... Are they getting fainter, maybe?
They're getting a little bit more see-through, but yeah, I wasn't sure if it was working to start with.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a branch in the road. So I can't actually remember what our goal is, other than just send all of the souls back. So I don't know if we have to get to a particular location, or if we can just run around and then leave when we've had enough.
Yeah, it seems more like it's survival than collecting something. It's not... I imagine if you can dodge them, you're probably also okay, but they move faster than you.
But for example, am I going to have to like if I reach the end, is that good enough, or am I going to have to turn around and come back?
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm quite low on health at the minute. Oh, okay. So yeah, dead end. So shall I try and make it back to the exit, do we think, or should I keep pressing onwards?
The way it was framed, I thought we were trying to go forward to a new destination, but it might well be just
maybe
stay alive for the timer. I don't know what happens when the timer runs out. Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
I think a bad thing. So there was a little bit of dialogue before we went into the cave that said, basically, anyone that stays here too long is doomed. Also, some of these things seem to have more health than others. Or maybe it's just how close I hold the torch to them. Who knows? But the light effect is very, very nice. Yeah. It feels like we've got a lot of dead ends, so maybe it is just clear out this and then go back to the monk. You know, I'm gonna head back now and and see if that if
Yeah.
that's enough ghosts or enough souls.
It doesn't seem to obviously be like a solve this maze type puzzle. It seems to be more of the survive the NPCs interaction.
I found more monsters, so I guess I've not been this way before. This is probably not the way to the exit, but oh well. Nice use of light. Like, I like the way the torches sort of cast a glow around.
Yeah, both from the player and from environmental lights.
Yeah, exactly. And on that note, let's start talking about the overall sort of quality, like the present. Aha! Never mind. Let's talk about this. I could have sworn something flew out of that chest when I opened it. It seems the soul stealer has shattered because I didn't absorb any lost souls. But I wasn't planning to use it anyway. Okay. So the timer's gone away, the music's gone away, we've lost our sword. Okay, and the ruler of Limbo is head. I'm not feeling great about the amount of health we've got.
Yeah, we might happen to find some extra health somewhere, but we haven't seen any indication of it yet.
Does his health bar seem to be getting lower to you?
It does not appear to be. No. It's not quite clear how close you need to be for the torch to have an effect, but you've been pretty close. If it's true that your torch doesn't work on this guy, then we're going to have a problem.
Maybe it's a supposed to lose fight.
Maybe.
Yeah, we don't have a sword. Maybe there's something.
It's true that if we had the sword, we could attack it, but not sure yet.
Maybe we just have to run away.
Well, there's not a timer now, so it's not like survive for a certain amount of time, probably.
Also, the design of this sort of final arena looks a bit interesting. I'm not sure if these are like steps or not.
Yeah, sort of wooden platforms between rocky pillars. But I don't know if they have any actual effect gameplay-wise. They're quite useful, so you have a good idea of where you are. That was interesting. It looks like you weren't permitted to walk across that bridge.
Yeah, that seemed to be... Okay. Aha! It is a supposed to lose fight. So because we saved all of the souls with the Torch of Purity, he's now no longer immune to the Torch of Purity. There we go. Okay, that's kind of nice. That's a sort of... what's the word? Not quite playing with agency, but... Actually, yeah, playing with agency. Like, taking away your powers, making you feel helpless, but then because of the choices that you've made, restoring your agency at the end.
Yeah.
There we go. Completed the pacifist route. Let me just very quickly pick up the... Oh, I can't get to my volume mixer from here. Okay, so let's start a new playthrough and we'll go through and find some of the other branches. And this time, yeah, let's have a chat about the overall quality of the game, starting with the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're interested in graphics, audio, and information design in the first category. The graphics certainly look nice. You made a particular comment about the lighting effect being particularly well used and particularly appealing, which is nice. You certainly got audio cues on some of the interactions, and there was a background track, I think, as well.
A little bit of managed agency there. We can't go into the dungeon until we've spoken to both the monk and the Oni. That's kind of nice.
Good, lovely. There's some very minor inconsistencies just with the text font not really matching the pixelated style, but it's still quite a nice font overall. Certainly all the sprites and the rest of the assets are all very consistent.
Yeah. Okay. So where are we? I mean, would we say it's good, complete, and
good would require a professional, complete, and effective presentation, which I think we probably have. We need to check that the information design matches up with that. Which broadly, we've got our health, we've got this timer. Some of this map area, we might find that we can't really explore it properly without a mini-map or whatever, but I don't think it's necessarily the most important part of the game to have a mini-map here. That's pretty good. It is a little difficult to see the health of these enemies. The fact that they don't have much health is probably okay from that regard. We certainly do have a health bar for the boss, and it's very important that we have that. So certainly I think we're at the good level. If we're going up to excellent, we would have to find impactful, complete, effective, and appealing presentation. What are your thoughts on that?
I've got to give my thoughts now. We're rolling away from zombies. Yeah, I don't know if it's quite there. Like, there's a few things that, like you say, like seeing the individual health of the enemies. But then again, you're also right in that because they've got such little health, maybe it's not the end of the world. And if they're leaning into the exploration side of things, then the fact that we don't have a mini-map is less of an issue, or I guess like part of the challenge rather than like something that they overlooked. But yeah, does it? Do we think they're appealing?
Parts of it really do hit that complete effective and appealing, so maybe halfway between good and excellent.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, there's a few little bits of like extra polish that they could do to make it really, really appealing. But what they've got is quite nice. Oh, and we didn't even mention the audio, so they've got like some background ambience and a few little sound effects to highlight stuff as well. So yeah, I think it's really good. So I think between good and excellent works quite nicely.
Lovely. Next thing to look for there is meaningful play. So we want mechanics, controls, and bugs. Have you seen any bugs or difficulties with the controls at the moment?
I haven't noticed any bugs. The controls are fine. In terms of meaningful play, I mean, I was about to say, you know, it's not that much of a challenge, but I have just looked at my health again, and it's not great. But there is a
more the case then that it's a little repetitive. Like all the enemies behave pretty similarly. There's maybe a few that are slightly faster or whatever, but you're always attacking it the same way. Often the dominant strategy is the same. You sort of swing your sword or wave the torch while slowly backing away.
Yeah, exactly, and they'll get sort of caught on these little decorative boxes and things like that. So they definitely have a set of mechanics, but it's not an especially complex set. So, like you say, different enemies that attack in different ways, or there being more of a difference between the way that we need to use the torch and the sword.
Yeah, because that maybe make it the satisfactory level we want. Playable, simpler game with few mechanics, usable controls, may have some minor bugs, or higher than that, engaging, with a reasonably complex game with some with multiple mechanics, smooth controls, may have minor bugs.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, one more time for me.
So that was between satisfactory and good. Satisfactory is playable, simple game, few mechanics, but usable controls. Good is engaging, complex game, or reasonably complex game, multiple mechanics, smooth controls. Not sure whether we've got as high as complex game or reasonably complex game with multiple mechanics. So we're maybe partway between the two, or we're down at the satisfactory for the simpler game with fewer mechanics.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think like if the pathing of the AI was a little bit tighter, or they had, you know, slightly more differentiable like attack patterns or something like that, then like if, for example, there was a ranged enemy as well that fired, I don't know, spirit essence or something at you, then that would probably tip it up towards good.
And then hit hard or something exactly like that.
But as it is, yeah, like you say, a reasonable mix of things, but there's definitely scope for a little bit more. Tinus there. Okay.
So, next we want to turn our attention to story engine, and we'll, maybe play through a little bit more to see where some of these decisions come in, but we're interested in the game world of the story, and the story of the game world. But here, interestingly, you can attack the boss straight away.
Yep.
You didn't have to have to
feel the weight of our sins on our shoulders. The Soul Stealer consumes all, and you are no exception. You have completed the genocide route. Okie doke. And give me just one mo to bring up my volume slider, just so that we can definitely hear Dan over all of this. So it looks like there is one main sort of branch, and we'll have a look at the game notes that they handed in with this as well, to see if there's there's obviously the save everyone and the kill everyone route. Maybe there's like a neutral route where we save some people and kill some others.
Yep, absolutely. Looking at their flowchart here, 3 main paths. So there's pacifist, neutral, genocide, and they reckon on top of that there's a second layer. If you save or kill the Wanderer, you can get true pacifist and true genocide. I don't remember who the Wanderer is in this case. Is that the boss fight at the end, or is that something else?
I don't know. So there was a message when we opened the chest where it said something has flown out of this chest. Maybe that was it? That wasn't mega clear though.
Yeah.
But we'll have a look at that. Okay, so in terms of, I'm leaping ahead a little bit, but in terms of agency, it doesn't feel like they have an enormous number of choices. There's kind of one choice.
Yes.
Which is how many people do you kill? So we'll have a look at that in a moment. See if I can keep this relatively even. But in terms of, well, in fact, this kind of leads back to that. We can definitely see some the gameplay impacting the story. Yes, because here's the Wanderer, I guess. Stay back. I know how to fight. Nice. Okay. Okay, so potentially a second choice there where there's a special NPC that we can choose to save or not. That's kind of interesting. Oh no, now I can't get the true pacifist or the true murder ending though, because I've saved some of them now. So in terms of gameplay to story, yep, there's definitely an obvious impact of the gameplay to the story, because we're making these choices in gameplay, and sometimes and then that's determining the end of the story. So out of satisfactory, it would say some examples of where the game world impacts the story. For a good, it needs to be a number of examples where it impacts the story in important ways. And it's definitely in an important way, because it changes the ending. But does it consist of a number of them?
I suppose if we're seeing a number of choices, then we could imply, there's a few Wanderers, and how many of the Wanderers you spend your time to go and save from this maze. Now you save some or all of them. Might be more like a number of decisions.
Yeah, it's very much the kind of the same. Calling it an issue is maybe not fair, but the same issue that games like Mass Effect have, where it's a case of there's all of these different decisions all the way throughout. Every single enemy you could choose to spare or to kill. But that's really just one decision that you're then repeating over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like Mass Effect, you might as well tick a box that says Paragon or Renegade right at the start. And then have it just automatically make all of those choices for you all the way through, to an extent. I'm simplifying massively, but it's that kind of thing. So every enemy we make, we have a choice, but it's really just the same choice sort of drawn out. So
yeah, it could be the same choice if the context was different, but I think generally speaking the context is the same here. You're always either trying to save people or trying to absorb them, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes the story will have you potentially kill off some random people that you don't know, and then suddenly the next NPC is your sister or something, and now the context has changed in a way that might meaningfully change your decisions.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting sort of curveball to throw in. So, okay, so I would say maybe between those two then, because it definitely impacts it in an important way because it affects the ending of the story, and beyond that, it is sort of the one choice that sort of permeates through the entire game rather than being a multiple choices or a network of choices. Again, I'm trying to talk and fight zombies at the same time. Okay, so what about the other way around? Are there any
Yeah,
story choices we make that impact the gameplay?
and I've read the notes here, so I'm interested to see whether you can notice any of the things that they say are the story, the story to game effects.
So the only thing that I can sort of think of is if we're counting the do we want to save souls as a story choice rather than gameplay, which I'm not sure we do because we've counted it the other way around for the previous one. But if then we choose to save everyone, we lose our sword at the end of the game, and that impacts the gameplay quite a bit.
Yeah, so there's a couple of little bits like that. Certainly, the interaction with the boss fight at the end is maybe the most important one. The thing there where losing the sword, and apparently there's some unique dialogue options and experiences with the pacifist and true pacifist endings, force the player to die, which we saw on your first run. But they are saved by the lost souls, they are freed, and the boss's immunity to torture purity is lifted. So that's certainly a gameplay effect. Whether it's, I think it's on the borderline between being an actual meaningful play decision and sort of an artificial delay. But it does contribute to the story there to say that you can't fight the boss in the way that you've been fighting, and they introduce a new narrative way of resolving that.
Yeah, in terms of its impact on the story, I like it quite a lot. It's a case of is it the story impacting the gameplay?
Yeah, it's sort of there's some small. They've got some other small examples that I certainly haven't noticed from watching you play, but I'll present them. They've said that if you save the Wanderer, you get some free healing. I hadn't noticed that, but that's a mechanical effect.
That is true, yeah. And that kind of is.
Freeing pixies from the chest gives you some speed boosts. I also hadn't noticed that happen, but yeah, so there's maybe minor effects there from the narrative decisions affecting gameplay.
Now, here's the thing. Were either of those things decisions? So, here's the thing, right? If I had got to that chest, and before I interact with it, and it says, there's a lot of tiny squeaking and a rattling in this chest, it sounds like it's full of pixies. Do you want to open it or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then it's
having the context there.
If you've got stuff in your game that players can interact with, they're going to just interact with everything, probably without thinking and probably without making a choice. And a secondary to that, why is it an interesting choice rather than a calculation? We'll get onto that when we talk about agency. But it's, I click on this thing and I get an upgrade with no other consequences, so I would never not do that.
Yeah.
So I would say, in terms of story impacting the game world, there's, and again, kind of receiving a power-up is kind of game world impacting game world rather than necessarily story. So we've kind of got the decision that we've made sort of within the narrative of save everyone or kill everyone. And then that affects a little bit of the gameplay sort of in the boss fight at the end, I would say. Whoop, I just ran straight into the boss because I was reading the Mox criteria. Good job, Tom. So we've got... I would say we're maybe between a pass and a satisfactory for story to game world, because there's some sparse or minor examples of the story impacting the game. In fact, it might actually be at the pass level, because I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you there. That there are some examples that they're broadly minor examples. They've certainly thought about it, but in order to have a few more effects, you could kind of take that a little bit further, particularly since they've introduced these characters, Oni and whoever the first quest giver was. They could potentially tie those back in a little bit, right? Like have those characters be more directly connected to the decisions here. So to go back and report your findings to them, and they change the gameplay somehow for you, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Or again, kind of using the the Star Wars moral choice system, where the eviler you are, the more special powers you get, and that's kind of your incentive for being evil. Like, there's literally a mechanical, canonical reason for being evil at that, because if you're evil enough, you can shoot lightning out of your hands. So speaking of agency, so what do we think of the richness of choices in this?
Yeah, do we have a number of interesting choices? We have the one core decision really is the am I saving people or absorbing them? And then there's the additional choices maybe with the wanderer and the chest, but certainly the chest is less of a decision, more like a calculation. The wanderer, were we offered different outcomes for saving or not saving the wanderer when we meet them?
As far as I can see at the minute, when we speak to them, we get healed, and then afterwards we can choose to stab them. But why would we choose to stab them? Is that an interesting choice for us to make? I guess if stabbing them, does it, charge up our soul blade? Because it did say something about, oh, that seemed a unique soul, so maybe it gives us some extra damage. So I feel like we're not quite given maybe enough context for the choice or the consequences. But if that works how I'm imagining it works, then that actually is actually quite an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Do you murder this innocent person to get an extra boost of power? So
yeah, and
feels
there's
like
potentially narrative opportunities there, right, as well. They've said in their notes the wanderer apparently was a medic in their past life, so that ties in with the existence of the healing when you talk to them. But I feel like there's more that could be done there with either, he follows you and keeps healing you would be an effect, or, if it's true that this guy has been in this dungeon trapped for years and years or whatever it is, then he knows the layout. He can give you advice on where to go, or some other, something that ties directly into why this character is here and what mechanical effects that would have for the player.
Yeah, because as is, you can get the heal and then still stab him anyway. So if you're doing an evil playthrough, you still get all of the benefits and none of the consequences.
Yeah, like he might as well be a med pack sitting on the floor, as opposed to a character to some extent.
Okay, so a pass would be some choices, but only a few are interesting. A satisfactory would be a number of interesting choices.
We might be between those, or leaning towards some choices, but a few are interesting. I think the core one is maybe interesting, the good or evil choice, but there's not a lot of once you've chosen to be good, why would you choose to kill the wanderer or whatever?
Why would you choose to be neutral? I guess like if there's a neutral ending, why would I want to choose it? And I mean, you could set that up and sort of frame it as, maintaining balance in the afterlife, or even something about, punishing evil souls and redeeming good ones. But the way that it's set up, there doesn't seem to be a reason to do that. You either go all one way or all the other. So I would say there are definitely some choices. In fact, so here's the thing. I would say pretty much all the choices that they got are interesting, but there are only a few. There are only a few of them. And actually, going back to what we were saying about the medic and the pixies, I'm not sure they are choices so much as calculations. Oh, so here's the medic again.
Is he in a different place?
Free to final trial. Best. Okay, so he does give us a little bit of a heal. So okay, so that actually probably is an example of story to game world. So they do have some examples of it affecting it. So I'm happy with what we said for that.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So for the richness, we think some choices, but a few are interesting.
Yeah, which takes us on to... Oh, sorry. So here's a fun fact. So the medic has healed me to full, but I still have to die to proceed with the rest of the fight.
Yeah.
Which
the medic will tell you that the boss was immune to the torch as well, but that doesn't really progress the story, which I guess segues us quite nicely into pacing as our next thing to discuss.
Okay, so I mean, we definitely have some ascendant pacing, and we have a clear final peak, because this is, a final boss fight is a good way of having that final climax. We've got the sort of introduction where we're given some of the setting, and we're given then the dungeon where we sort of fight some small monsters, and then we get the big final sort of climactic fight for our souls. It's pretty good stakes.
Yeah.
It feels like, I mean, certainly mechanically, we've already sort of talked about the mechanics that they've got and how they could maybe incorporate a few more to make it a bit more interesting. And the same could be said for the pacing, right? If you start off with weaker monsters, and then as you go through the dungeon, things become darker and more dangerous, and there's more enemies or more powerful enemies, then that sort of helps the mechanical pacing, which in turn ties into the narrative pacing. But I think what they've got as is quite good. So in fact, good. Ascendant pacing with a clear final peak. That sounds pretty on the money to me.
Yep, I agree. That sounds exactly right.
So in terms of storytelling techniques, we have, obviously we have the dialogue, both with the characters and I guess the couple of signposts that are scattered around.
Mm-hmm.
We start in medias res, which is one of the sort of structure techniques that we talk about. So we start, we are dead.
Interesting. Like, it's certainly the first thing we said was, this is in media res. Although I was expecting that there might be something harking back to before we died, or other people before they died, or something. There's a sense in which this is really just is the start of the story, right? Like,
that is true.
We were alive before doesn't actually have any bearing on this story. So I think it kind of is an attempt at media res, but media res is usually there to set up for something where you flash back and the relevant things in the flashback give you context to what's happening now.
And that would be, like you say, an excellent setup for, one of these souls you meet is somebody you knew before you died. And then piecing together your relationship with them gives you an idea of, do I want to save them? Do I want to damn them?
Yeah.
And you get a lot of drama out of that. So yeah, you're right. It's, I guess it is, in a way, starting in medias res, but... Stab. Oh. I can't murder him after I've spoken to him, so I take that back. So once he's healed us, he becomes immune to swords. Okay, I take that bit back then. In which case, what other techniques have we got? I would almost put, the supposed to lose fight, or rather like the fight that you are forced to lose, kind of as a technique, right? Again, sort of that playing with agency and sort of like taking away your power only to give it back to you later. I think that actually works quite nicely as a technique.
Yeah.
So I would say they've still got a couple of different techniques. You're right that maybe some of them could be fleshed out a little bit more effectively. But I think they definitely...
We should give them credit for making an attempt there and using it in part. So certainly we're probably at the good level, says successful use of more than one game writing technique. We might be up to the next level, use of more than one game writing technique and mechanics support theme. To what extent do we think the mechanics and theme are tied together here?
Well, here's a question. Which of the fables do you think this one is based on?
I've read the notes, so I can tell you what they think.
I would love to know what they think, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, they go, twist on the given panther and shepherd story, where the protagonist is considered the shepherd, based on the idea of karma, resulting in different endings and different interaction the choice makes based on how they treat the NPCs in the world around them.
Okay. So I can kind of see it. The story about the farmer and the panther is all about, actually, I would say the moral of it is all about effectively making enemies, right? If you do something bad to somebody, they're going to come back and get you. So it does have that kind of karma idea, but nothing we do in this comes back to get us.
No.
I mean, I guess if we sort of pick the evil option, karma then does sort of bite us a little bit, but the mechanics of doing good versus evil don't really change. So if, doing the good path was like harder or like required something different, but as you sort of said right at the start, both of them is just mashing a mouse button and running away from the monster. There's not a lot there where the mechanics underline that theme. The story obviously does, but the mechanics themselves don't necessarily lead into it. I don't think they hinder it, but I don't think they support it especially well. So I think that still leaves them at good.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, and then that brings us on to the final part for the marking. We're interested in feedback, so I will go through what feedback they said that they had sought and responded to. They said one piece of feedback they received was related to integration of story mechanics. The core concept was good, unique interactions with the player were originally only provided through the core decision of freeing or absorbing souls. So they decided to add side quests, including the Wanderer, to make the story have more branches. Which I suppose they certainly have done. They have taken that feedback. We said before that those decisions were not quite interesting enough to really provide a compelling set of story branches.
And the same with the side quests as well. Like we were not aware that we were saving some pixies from a chest until we read it in their notes. So, I mean, it does, like, it adds something to what they had, but I don't think it's necessarily had all of the impact that they were hoping for.
Yeah. And the second piece of feedback was about the mechanical balance. They said the evil option, using the Soul Stealer, the sword, is fundamentally stronger than using the Torch of Purity.
Is it?
So they provided an incentive for players to use the pacifist run because implementing the unique boss fight scenario, which makes the final stage of the game far easier for those who took the pacifist route. I didn't actually spot that necessarily in the run that we did. It might just be the numbers behind the scenes are changing a little bit.
I mean, I was going to say, like, we just said, like, oh yeah, using the sword and the torch both feel about the same. So I'm not sure, again, that's had the impact that they were hoping for. I can understand their reasoning behind it, and I do think, in terms of the final boss fight, using the torch is much, much easier. But again, it doesn't come across sort of noticeably different in the lead up to that. So I understand the reasoning behind it, but I don't think the changes have actually helped that much. Maybe they could have sort of taken that idea and run a little bit further with it. So passively the feedback's been addressed, but the changes have had limited success. Satisfactory would be they've been somewhat successful.
Yeah, and I'd say we're either at the limited or somewhere between limited and somewhat successful.
I think probably between the two, right? Like the changes that they have, or at least the rationale behind the changes, is quite good. The changes themselves, perhaps more on the limited side of things. Okie doke, and with that, that brings us to the end of this game. Let's move on to the next one. And our next game is Shepherd's Escape. So we've got a very nice title screen here. Like got some sheep, got some lovely music. I'll just
simple but effective. Yeah. Good choice of green background for obvious reasons.
Let's have a look at the controls. Ooh. So nice transition. Maybe takes a little bit too long. WSD, E to enter or interact, left click to throw rocks, space to use your items. So we're not exactly told what we need to do yet, but hopefully that bit will be tutorialized in game a little bit. They've even got credits. Again, bit of a painfully slow transition there, but it is always really, really nice to see people like credit things in their game, especially when they don't technically have to, where it's CC0. It's always good to see people, like telling us where they got their stuff from. So let's jump into the game itself. Aha! Go explore and find out what all the commotion is about. Okay. You there. It's eating the sheep. Oh, there's an alien. There is some sheep. Button. So we got 8 sheep. Is it about to eat the sheep? It's just going back over there. Oh, I've got to go home now. So we go to work. We find an alien in our field, and we think, you know what? Time for a nap. Which is our house. I'm guessing red door.
Yeah, you're
wearing a red shirt. I always match my wardrobe to my front door. It's very convenient. See if you can trade with some of the other shepherds. So we've got 8 sheep and 10 rocks.
Yeah.
Do you want to trade some sheep for some rocks? No, 2 sheep for some rocks doesn't sound great. I'll open that. Where was the other? Is there another shepherd that we can?
I believe up there, top left. There's more people.
Do you want to trade some sheep for a sheep whistle? I don't know. Why would I want a sheep whistle?
So I guess the guess is that if you use the sheep whistle, the sheep will come to you?
Oh, so that sheep's changed colour, so I guess we've gone down to 6. So I guess, yeah, we not only do we coordinate our wardrobe with our front door, we coordinate with our sheep. So that's kind of nice. So that belongs to him now. Oh, the alien has returned. Stay alive for as long as you can. Okie doke.
We're waiting for the alien to arrive, I guess.
Interesting. So we can open Percival's gate. Do we want to do that? Why would we want to do that?
Mm.
No, I'm asking these questions semi-facetiously because I'm assuming that our goal is to not just survive for as long as possible, but to save as many of our sheep as possible. So let's push. Oh, he was stuck on the terrain a little bit.
Yeah, some of the collisions here I think have a little bit of issues sometimes. Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be going for my sheep.
Yeah.
He sort of goes for them and then runs away.
He's what? Is he trying to hit that farmer?
Is he going for this shepherd? Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
I may have inadvertently killed a man. But hey, all of the sheep have changed colour, so maybe they're our sheep now.
Yeah, it would be interesting if you can claim unclaimed sheep, then there's a massive moral dilemma in the do you intentionally get your neighbours killed so you can steal their sheep?
Just put them in here. Oh, is that why it's clipping on the edge here? Because it's trying to get that sheep in the pit.
Yes, so I think the thing that's going on here, it wasn't clear to me the first time I saw this, but it was in the expo. That brown patch is the crash landing site where the alien arrived.
Oh, okay.
Which is why the alien was there first, except that after the first scene, the alien either can't go back in the hole or doesn't want to go back in the hole. So it sits there looking at the sheep that's in the hole and kind of just wishes that it could get them.
So it feels like letting the sheep get in the hole is probably a mistake there, because it's going to mess up the pathfinding a little bit. So it looks like if we throw rocks at it, it goes for us rather than the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, the incentive of that has to be, if it's chasing us, then it's not chasing our sheep. But also, we move so much faster than it.
It does seem a little easy to just, send the alien on a really boring chase round in circles. If you go around in circles around any of the pens or around any of the houses or whatever, the alien's just going to keep running in circles.
Can I chat to you? Oh no. He just says, okay, so that's kind of nice. When the alien shows up, they stop trading stuff and you get a little bit of different dialogue.
Yeah.
Is there any? No, you're dead. Okay.
Yeah, that farmer got killed by the alien earlier, I think.
Okay, with the alien determining there to be too few sheep on the world to be worth invading, due to your skills at hiding the sheep, the alien leaves, but who knows when it may return. Okay, let's give it another go.
Mm-hmm.
Go and explore, find out what all the commotion's about. So he's throwing stones at... Hello. It'll be dead by morning. You reckon? You also say it will be dead by morning. Can I feed it a sheep?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure you can get in the hole either, so you can get the sheep near it, but not necessarily close enough for the alien to eat it. We might have run into a minor bug here, which I think is that farmer in blue gets stuck and needs a little help to move on, and then the next scene can progress.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
So we want him to throw some rocks. What does he say? That's enough for now.
It's interesting that there's a couple of red sheep that stand in the hole. It's kind of good tutorializing in the sense that it means that the alien can definitely eat a sheep and show you that that's what's going to happen. But it feels a little bad in the sense that your objective is keep all your sheep alive. Also, here is a sheep that you cannot do anything to protect.
Yeah, if it was somebody else's sheep, that would
That would be nicer.
be a little bit fairer, I guess. Can we? Do you want to trade some sheep for a sheep whistle? It'll cost you extra because we have. So, why would we open the gate before this point? So there's obviously this sort of like mechanical incentive of well, if we open our neighbour's gates, then the alien will get in and eat them all. But then our neighbour will be angry and he'll charge us more for the items. But the alien isn't chasing us before we trade. It's just in a pit. So opening all of the gates before we do any trading is, again, in terms of choice versus calculation, that's a calculation. There's no reason to do it.
Yeah, it almost feels like it would benefit from several much shorter loops of alien attack, trade, alien attack, trade, alien attack, trade, with this sense that it gets more and more desperate each time, so that this idea of intentionally betraying and leaving other people's sheep in the firing line becomes much more compelling, and then there's a trading phase after that.
Yeah, because that way you'd also get some like automatic pacing, if you like, of things become more challenging, not just because the alien is eating the sheep, but so you've got fewer sheep to trade with. But no, it's going for me this time. Let's lead it in here, because this farmer's dead, so he won't care.
You have to do slightly weird pathing to get it not stuck on the.
And then can I lock it in? Okay, I can't shut the gate again afterwards. That's a bit of a shame. So
I suppose it's too easy if you could just shut it in.
A little bit too easy, yeah. So our first ending that we got was there aren't enough sheep on this planet, so let's feed him some more sheep.
Yeah.
I've got to throw rocks at him to actually get him to follow me.
Yes, he's going to path badly to try and get to the next sheep, so you have to kind of quite actively help
come on,
him
buddy.
find
Come on. I'm gonna take him, and I'm gonna love him, and I'm gonna care for him, and I'm gonna call him George. I'm no longer a sheep farmer. I'm an alien farmer.
I suspect that farming aliens will be much more profitable than farming sheep.
Well, there's only one of them, so unless you reproduce it through mitosis.
Yeah.
That's right. Eat up. Yum yum. I'm getting distracted by playing this rather than saying anything insightful or critical about it. So, with that in mind, let's start going through the marks criteria. I guess first on will be the overall sort of quality. So, the graphics, the meaningful play, and so on. So, starting off with the overall like presentation and aesthetics. Graphically, it's very nice. I can tell what's a farmer and what's a sheep. I can tell roughly where the bounds of play are. We've got our information up here at the top showing us what items we've got and how many sheep we've got and so on, as well as the next instruction.
Yep, I would also say that the choice of graphics and audio here kind of fits the tone. They've done quite a good job of keeping all that consistent, both in terms of looks consistent, but sort of feels consistent as well, right?
I feel like we're having to avoid the alien for long. I say avoid. We're having to evade the alien for longer this time. Ah, there we go. So, and I wonder if that's because there's something to do with, like if it has eaten a sheep in the last 5 seconds, it extends the timer or something like that. But okay, so with the alien determining this world to be rich in sheep to feast upon, but understanding your kindness, a deal is able to be brokered. Okay, so he thinks we're kind. So we did throw a rock at him a couple of times, but that was just to lead him to sheep. He realizes it was for his own good. Oh, I think we might have got eaten behind it. So I've forgotten
Yeah,
what the
so
controls for
interestingly, that point about the
space to use items.
the timer is one that I was going to bring up for information design. I would say that not being able to see the time is probably an issue here. That we're trying to survive for some amount of time and we don't know how long is left. Kind of, we might come back to it when we talk about pacing as well, but the core here is survival, and survival is against the clock, but the clock's not there, so it's, I don't know, it feels a little bit undirected because we don't have that that main thing being the clock to focus on.
Okay, so feels like they're mostly complete and effective. Or actually, I would almost put it this way: feels like they are appealing, but maybe not necessarily complete. Which I think still probably evens out at a good.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Sheep for a sheep whistle. Yes, I'll have a sheep whistle.
Yeah, let's do a little bit of a playthrough trying to get some of these mechanics into play.
But see, this is the thing, right? I've bought these items so I can help save my sheep, but now I've only got 4 sheep.
Yeah,
and I can spend those on some rocks if I want.
And the strange thing as well is that because the alien chases you, the sheep whistle might actually be a detriment because it puts all the sheep near you.
Is there any deficit or any drawback, I should say, of running out of sheep? Because it seems like the ending is just determined by how many sheep it eats, not by whether we have any sheep left at the end of the game.
Yeah. I'll have a little look at the pathways to see whether or not there's...
I've got to press this button a lot for the sheep to follow me. I'm not going to do that. That's going to get very annoying on the audio. But okay, so where do we settle on that? Good for presentation, meaningful play. So how well does it control? What are the mechanics like? We do kind of have... Oh, he's stuck. And bugs. So there's definitely a few bugs. They are not fully game-breaking, but unless you know how to recognize them and rectify them, I guess they can kind of soft-lock you. But there's a number of different mechanics. There's the alien that chases you. The alien can eat sheep. The alien can eat people. We've got sort of a money system, a shop system where we spend sheep on different resources. There's opening and closing the gates. Again, the problem is I don't think these mechanics gel particularly well together. The only reason you having a limited number of sheep matters is because you can buy every item you want unless you've opened those gates. But there's no reason to open those gates at the point at which it would become a problem.
Yeah.
So I've spent all of my I've spent almost all of my sheep, and I've got 2 left over, and now I can open the gates, right?
Yeah. There's no downside.
And in fact, I could even let the alien eat the other shepherd if I wanted to be particularly mean. So there's definitely a set of a set of mechanics, but in terms of meaningful play, they are a little bit not completely incoherent, but they don't work that well together because of the things we pointed out. And obviously, as I'm demonstrating now, there's no challenge in leading the alien away. He follows you relatively slowly. So if I want to keep him away from my sheep, all I have to do is lead him into a corner and then just...
Yeah, I think it would make quite a significant improvement to how the game feels if the sheep wanted to also follow you because, they trust you or something. And now you've got the complicated interplay between if you're running around to try and distract the alien, the sheep are also running after you, and then the sheep are right next to the alien, and you have to do something more complicated to mitigate that. Have we discovered what the crook or the cane item actually does?
It makes a noise.
Does it scare away sheep?
Oh, so I can make the sheep go away. So it's the opposite of the whistle, basically. It just sort of repulses sheep a little bit. And again, I'm not sure how useful that is even if the alien was much faster and I was having to manage the sheep, I don't know how useful that little push or that little pull of the whistle and crook actually are.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I believe there's a third ending, which is alien eats lots of sheep, but it's sad that you've thrown a lot of rocks at it. So I guess we'll try and get that. In terms of meaningful play, yeah, it's interesting. It's the mechanics that are there all work okay. The problem is they don't work together. So it becomes a very simple game, right? A very sort of trivial experience, because there's no challenge in running.
Interact with a lot of the mechanics,
and also some of the, and again, I've sort of said this already, the goals are a bit unclear, right? I've got 8 sheep, but what do I care if the alien eats the sheep? It doesn't actually bother me. But maybe that, actually, then again, maybe that ties in with, the theme and the story. So we'll come back to that later. So it feels like it is playable. It is, I would say, it's at sort of the satisfactory level. So it is a simpler game. It's not that it has fewer mechanics; it's that the mechanics don't combine.
Few of the mechanics are really relevant.
Yeah, and it definitely has some minor bugs.
Yeah.
So I think, it feels like it's sort of at the satisfactory level. It might even be between a pass and a satisfactory, but I think let's say satisfactory.
Yeah. Okay. How about the story engine? We'll start with game world to story. So what game decisions can you make that affect the story? Clearly we have the branching ending. There is different endings based on what happens in the game. But we have other decisions.
So I think that is the primary one of. And it's interesting, again, is this a decision, is it a choice, or is it something that highlights our skill at play? Are we weirdly, because of the flaws in the pathing and the speed of the alien that we've mentioned already, it actually does become a choice. It's not just a case of, oh, I'm bad at this game, so I lost all of my sheep, but now the alien is happy. It's a case of, if I want to choose to feed the alien, I have to choose to do it. So maybe that's even intentional. But in which case, the main impact is we take those decisions, or we demonstrate that skill within the game, and then it changes the ending of the story, and we get just a little bit of text at the end telling us what the epilogue is, if you like. So a pass would be sparse or minor examples of where the game impacts the story. Satisfactory would be some examples of where it impacts the story.
Oh, we lost the farmer.
Oh, again, sort of highlighting what I was saying, I hadn't realised the alien was back. I've just been sat here talking about it. So let me go find the alien. Because they did say they try and spawn it away from the player, which is kind of interesting. There we go. Oh, I meant to buy some more rocks. I feel like I could probably just pick up some rocks. Can I get eaten? Does that? Okay, so we don't have a health bar or anything like that, but hey, we can actually get eaten. So in a way, it's not dissimilar from the previous game, where there's effectively one choice that we make sort of like throughout the gameplay, which is, do we keep letting it eat sheep or not? And then it has that impact on the ending. But it feels like it's less of a choice in a way.
Yeah.
So it feels like maybe
ultimately, because the framing here is game happens, then game stops, then some story end is the narrative bit that is added to it. I think we're going to struggle a little bit to see this rich interplay back and forth between the story, because there's no game after the story.
And there's not much story within the game. There's like a little bit of dialogue from the farmers. But I guess there is some story told in like the events that are happening. But the biggest thing that changes is, or the only thing that changes, is that sort of paragraph at the end. So it feels like this is more akin to satisfactory, maybe between a pass and a satisfactory.
Yeah, I was thinking pass or satisfactory.
And again, similarly for story to game world, what are the story decisions we're making? Again, sort of, I guess, having this dialogue with the farmers, it changes the game. Does it change the gameplay? The power-ups do, because they give us new mechanics. It's not really a story decision that's driving that, though. That's almost like more a mechanical gameplay decision. It's if you have enough sheep, you can pay for it.
Yeah.
But so what do I mean by that? So a story decision, for example, might be the farmer says, "Yeah, you can borrow my whistle if you are willing to look after some extra sheep or something like that." It's still a very mechanical thing, but it's you're making a promise to a character, and then they'll give you that sort of like mechanical benefit, or not even an extra gameplay challenge as well. So it's still the story impacting the game.
That has the potential to build, the sort of risk reward thing into it as well, which would give these higher stakes to make those choices more impactful. Where something like, you could look after someone else's sheep. Certainly, if a farmer dies, are you obliged to look after their sheep, or can you choose to look after their sheep, or these sort of things would have quite nice interplay.
So I guess
the sheep that aren't yours don't feel like they do a lot, or don't feel like they matter very much.
So actually, this is something that I meant to say when we were talking about gameplay to story, because even the ones that are ours don't feel like they matter a huge amount. Because the only time that we can lose them is after they have become after they're useful. They're only useful to trade with the other farmers. So if, for example, and I think this would be quite a simple and elegant way of doing it, we have the little paragraph at the end talking about what happens to the alien. What if there's another paragraph after that telling us what happens to us? So the alien is happy, we've saved the world, but I don't know, we starve because we've lost all our sheep.
Right in the village because you messed up everybody else's sheep. That's the narrative outcome that is more relevant to our character,
and more relevant to the gameplay, and then it gives you that more goal, which then ties back into the mechanics.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that would also be elevated. We said before that the potential for almost doing it in waves, where there's more iterations between the alien does some stuff and then goes away, and then comes back and does some stuff and goes away, and you get to trade and do whatever the narrative bits in between each of those mini games. It becomes almost more, I'm going to say, tower defense game almost, right? Like where there's these waves that you have to deal with, and you get to make interesting decisions between those waves. Then it would be the case that you can pull out of what happens after each wave to inform the story decisions for the next bit.
There we go. There's the third ending. So I will say, maybe that is something that they planned to do, but then, with it, like within the time that they had available, they had to reduce the scope. And to be fair, that is exactly what they should do. So, keep things sort of simple rather than necessarily overstretching. So, did we finish story to game world? No, I don't think we did. So again, it's a bit of a reach, but yeah, opening the other farmers' gates is a sort of a narrative decision we're making. Are we going to be a nice neighbor or a bad neighbor? Are we going to put the safety of our flock above the others? And that then impacts the gameplay, both in that it increases the prices for things, and it means we can just leave the alien in here and let it eat somebody else's sheep for a bit instead of ours. So it feels like story to game world, there is more happening, and more of it is sort of under the player's control, but there's still a lot more scope for doing something even more interesting than what they've got. So it feels like that's sort of at the satisfactory level to me.
Yeah, I would agree. If we want to go higher into good, we need to have that story impacts the game world in important ways. We're not quite there. So we do have some examples of story impacting the game world.
So what about the richness of choices that we're making? And again, I think we've already sort of spoken about this a little bit, but partly because the goals are unclear, and partly because the consequences of our actions are a little bit, well, not disconnected from what we do, but for example, we only get almost a subset of the context or of the consequences. So we find out, is the alien happy or sad, and I guess also to an important extent does Earth get invaded by aliens? But as you say, we're missing that thing that's most related to us. How well are we doing? Does it matter that we saved our sheep? Does it matter that we let all the other farmers get eaten, and so on? So
yeah.
And again, it comes back to that: are we making choices, or are we just playing a game well or badly?
Yeah, I think some of the decisions we're being pushed to make are, do we trade sheep for items? And the items didn't really have enough significance to the gameplay to make them feel like interesting decisions there.
And also, again, like there's no consequences to having 0 sheep, so
yeah,
there's no reason not to do that. So it becomes more of a calculation than a choice.
Yeah.
I think the interesting choice that they've got is: do you open your neighbour's paddocks? Like, are you selfish or are you kind? But again, there's a lot more that they could have done with that, I think, and it would be nice, to see them continue to develop this further.
Yeah, I think it is more a case that they've not quite had enough time to bring it to fruition, right? Because the thing that's lacking here is that the sheep don't have any movement, and the AI movement for the alien is a little bit janky as well. But if those two things were put together a little bit better, then that would make opening the other farmers' fields be much more impactful, right? Because if you open the field and then it's true that everybody else's sheep run away, and now they're mixed up with your sheep and they really do dilute your sheep, which actually helps you out from hiding your sheep, that would achieve the thing that the choices are saying they present, right? Like when you open the gates, they say, if you open these gates, the sheep could get out. That's not actually true. The sheep don't get out because they don't go anywhere.
But it does say something might get in.
Yeah.
Which
right,
does happen.
Both of those things have to be true, right? Is the point there?
Yeah. Maybe it's an exclusive or. But okay, so a pass would be some choices, but only a fewer interesting choices. Poor would be few choices and player agency is problematic.
I feel like we have more than few choices. I just don't think that they're necessarily all interesting choices.
I'm almost leaning towards the agency is problematic because, again, there's a lack of consequences, a lack of context in the choices we're making. We're not making choices so much as just doing stuff. So I feel like maybe between a poor and a pass even.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Okay, so moving on to the design side of things and the pacing. So we definitely have some pacing. We start off with the alien in a pit. We then have a little rest. We have a bit of a chat with the NPCs. Again, maybe a bit more could have done with this to sort of get some story. Maybe one of our neighbours is a jerk, and actually it's in our interest to let the alien eat him. Or
yeah,
maybe,
right?
or maybe, like you say, we need like a little extra goal of actually we have to push our sheep around into their own little pasture or something like that, and then we have the sort of. So, in a way, it feels like we kind of have a climactic ending. Again, it's lessened a little bit by some of the mechanics and the speed of the alien, but ignoring that, we have a climax, right? The alien comes back and we have to survive. That's a climactic finale. There isn't actually that much ascendant pacing up to it.
No, I would say a lot of the gameplay is pretty flat. After the setup bit, where you learn what the problem is, pretty much the rest of the game plays the same. It's true that there's the climactic ending bit. I don't know necessarily whether it feels like it's building towards a climax, on the basis that, lacking the timer, you never feel like you're getting close to the end.
Well, if we look at it in
the last 10 seconds or something, where it feels like the stakes are getting higher.
Well, let me put it this way. If we look at the traditional Aristotelian 3-act arc, we've got 3 acts, right? We've got posing the question, oh my god, there's an alien here. 2, acquiring the means, going and buying our stuff, and then 3, the climax, the alien has returned. So in terms of that,
Yeah,
they definitely have the arc of it. But within each of those things, yeah, there is no like ascendant pacing leading up to that final climax.
I think for me, it's that the vast majority of the game really takes place in that 3rd act then, right? Like, the alien has returned is where most of the time of the game is spent, because setting up the game is very quick, and buying any stuff you want to buy is very quick. So really, most of it is in the 3rd act, which means that the bit where you'd expect the ascending pacing to be is traditionally the 2nd act, and that 2nd act, there's not much space for it.
Yeah,
so I was thinking it more like the 2nd act is this bit we're playing now, the alien is getting closer and closer and closer, and then the 3rd act is the climactic end screen bit only.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So a pass would be the pacing is unclear or flat. I think it's a little bit better than that, but you're right that it does have some sort of overall issue. So I would say maybe between a pass and a satisfactory.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me.
Okie doke. Storytelling techniques. So what techniques are they using to tell the story?
We have some dialogue boxes.
So we got some dialogue with the farmers. They don't really convey a lot of story. There's more of just the trading. I guess they throw in some snarky comments if you've opened their gates. There's the sort of fade to black sort of epilogue at the end,
which I guess is another dialogue.
Yeah, it's
the same sort of thing.
If there's So obviously we're not expecting fully 3D AAA rendered cutscenes. We have a much looser definition of cutscene.
Yeah.
But I think just fading to text is probably not quite something we count as a cutscene. If maybe they had like a static image on it and like the camera panned over an alien or a whole army of those little aliens looking angry, then maybe. As it is, it feels like we've got one.
Just a picture of the alien surrounded by tables full of sheep that it is happily munching on, or
yeah, exactly. So it feels like we've got like one technique that they've mainly used, and it's that sort of dialogue and text to convey it.
You could try and argue that they're using a sort of environmental storytelling by positioning the sheep in specific places and the alien trying to get them. Not sure how successful that is.
That's the thing. I think you could argue that they've tried it, but I'm not sure you could argue that it's successful because it doesn't convey much in terms of story if that's the goal. To an extent, again, like the technique that they've used, there is some issues with the amount of story that it conveys, but I feel like we can probably say this hits the satisfactory. So it's successful use of at least one writing technique.
Yeah, I think the dialogue boxes are a little minimal, but they've got a technique and they've used it successfully. So,
okay, so that brings us on to feedback.
Yeah.
So in the lab and feedback sessions, what feedback did we give them, and how have they acted on it?
Yeah, they say originally the main choices of our game was just how many sheep you were willing to sacrifice. The feedback we got was that resource management of the sheep isn't really a story-impacted choice, and our game needed more. We responded to this by adding the option to open other shepherd's gates at the start of the game as a new story-impacting choice. If you break open a shepherd's gate, it means the alien has a way into their pen to attack their sheep later on. The shepherd will know you've broken their gate and hold a grudge, and they will charge you more for items. We originally had the endings as the alien calls an invasion, or leaves, or the player dies. But we were told the player dying couldn't be considered an ending, so we added a new ending where the alien becomes friendly. So there's two bits there. One is
I will say it can be considered an ending. It can't really be considered a branching choice. A game over screen is not a, I feel like I've made a satisfying choice here.
Yeah, so let's consider that one there as the second piece first. The branching narrative, we've got the three endings, which is really where all the branching happens. We've got the alien wants to come to Earth and is angry, wants to come to Earth and is happy, and the alien doesn't want to come to Earth endings. How successful do we feel that they've been at making those feel like a reasonable choice of endings?
Yeah, like the endings are there. Again, we've sort of already talked about this earlier in terms of the agency and the richness of the story. That like there's sort of 3 endings, but there's not a set of branching choices throughout the game. So it is good, but I would say it's been sort of limited in its success. In the same with they try and give some sort of having said that, they give you this choice, but again, because of the way that it is, like the point at the game in which you can make this choice, it's not as effective as it otherwise could be.
Yeah, I think I agree with those.
So it feels like the feedback's been addressed. The changes have had... have they had limited success? Have they been somewhat successful? Because imagine if they hadn't made those changes.
If they hadn't made those changes, then there wouldn't be the sheep pens to even try and interact with, and then I think the game would really feel like there's nothing to do.
Yeah, there effectively would be like no agency at all if they hadn't done that. So maybe between a pass and a satisfactory, they've definitely had a positive impact, but they haven't had enough of a positive impact.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okie doke. And with that, that brings us to the end of this game. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, and our last game for this batch is the Healer's Dilemma. So we've got a pretty nice title screen here. Nice sort of picture. I really like this lightning effect. I think we can probably guess that this art is maybe the product of generative AI, which, you know, if you're ever using that in any of your things, first off, make sure it's all ethically sourced. But secondly, yeah, keep an eye out for like some of these artifacts that might spoil the effect a little bit, maybe. So we've got controls, we've got movement.
Nice audio as well. I wanted to point out the thunder sounds. It might even be true that the thunder and the lightning line up a little bit, at least sometimes.
Actually, you're right. That is a very sort of like atmospheric bit of ambience. So mouse to look around, E to interact with objects, Q to open and close phone. That to move. See if I remember all of that by the time we get in. Oh, okay. Very different graphical style compared to the title screen.
Yeah. Okay. So we're presumably in the hospital.
We're in the hospital.
Rooms
leaning on the wall. The controls are a little bit sensitive.
Can we talk to this guy?
Is that a nose or a mouth? They're just screaming. So I can't seem to press E to chat to them. This is my phone.
This is your phone. Luckily, you've got no work to do, which sounds like a very realistic.
I was going to say, yeah, there's no email notifications or anything. Bliss. Can we talk to you? Press E to talk. Okay. What if I don't? Whoop! I thought I fell through the world there for a second. Let's press E to talk. Welcome back to your shift. Oh, we work here. We're not ill. Welcome back to your shift. I expect it will be another busy day. I'm ready to get started. You've updated. Now my phone has a purpose. Use the health kits like the one next to my computer in each room to complete your tasks. Be nice to the new patients. So we're not playing Doctor House Simulator.
You don't have to be nice to the old people.
Phone's ringing. It's the boss. A murder suspect is being brought in for treatment. Do you want to take them as your patient? I mean, not really. I've got 3 patients already, but for the sake of content, let's say yes. Just stay cautious. So if I close and open that, okay, they're not on my task list. So bedroom 1, take temperature. Bedroom 2, remove bandages. Bedroom 3, take blood sample. Let's see if we can remember all of that. Oop, here we go. This is a burglar. Or no, hang on. I shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Maybe they just like stripes. So do task. Ooh, okay. That's so. Let's say that the graphics are maybe varying in consistency.
Yeah,
moves the thermometer to the patient's forehead. record the result.
Okay. Is that the...
Oh, it's very particular about where it is. So again,
Yeah,
given that we've got this image of a I've forgotten the name of this type of thermometer, but it'd be nice if this little thing changed position to the actual temperature.
Yeah. Certainly, they've grabbed an image and moved it around as opposed to drawing these as sprites or something. It's particularly noticeable that they've got text inside an image right next to text that they've drawn, and of course the text in the image is all blurry.
So now that I've done the task, I can't... Oh, no, I can still talk to him, but only if I'm...
Touch on the
There we
corner.
Please... Oh, this is the suspect, I guess. Calm down. Okay. So I was right that he was a Roman and a criminal because he likes stripes. Or at least he's suspected of being a criminal. Maybe he's not.
Let's find out what the assumptions we can make about the other.
You're having a bad time. Can't talk to you. Maybe is the suspected murderer the only person I can talk to? So let's use this. Click on the bandages to remove them. Bonk, bonk, bonk. All right. So these are some kind of interesting little mini games.
Yeah. Okay.
Not necessarily an enormous amount of complexity.
Yeah.
Oh.
We had a heartbeat thing show up when we were taking some of these bandages off, even though I thought that the next patient needs blood samples taking. Would have made more sense for the blood samples to have the heartbeat sound and for this to have vague...
I think all of them have. I think that might just be a generic hospital sound effect.
Okay, that's just the doing things now sound effect.
Okay, so I don't seem to be able to talk to this person, and they still have their bandages on.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's a bug, but that would kind of be nice if it, we remove them so that they show up removed as they're...
Just,
is there any reason to go into...
Right. This is maybe the boss's office? Oh, the storeroom.
It was the previous one was the boss's office. I just thought I would explore a little bit more blood. I have a feeling that because I told the murder suspect to calm down because I needed to do medicine rather than saying, yeah, I've got time, tell me about all of your problems, I feel like we may have missed a chunk of content. But we'll see. These must be very wealthy patients, and it's a very small hospital. Can't talk to you either. Press the veins to take a blood sample.
You're obliged to copy a whole list of numbers?
So
do you want me to read them so that you can just type?
So here's the thing, right? This is kind of interesting. Mechanic-wise, this is kind of a horrible experience to give your player. But if you're making them do a horrible thing to incentivize them to be lazy and skip it and make immoral choices, there is kind of something interesting there. I'm gonna do this for now.
Yeah.
And this can be the bad playthrough, and then we'll go and do all of... Oh, I can talk to this guy. Do you know if a murder suspect arrived at the hospital? No, I have no idea. I probably shouldn't be discussing other patients.
Something confidentiality.
Okay. There is a detective here to interview us. I don't think that's necessarily how that works. Okay. Since you've been directly involved with both the suspect and a victim, I'm pretty sure if I've been involved with the victim in a murder inquiry, I would be in the morgue and not the hospital, but do go on. Do you think this...
I think the suggestion is the guy in the third bed is one of the victims.
Maybe?
Supposedly. Except, clearly he didn't die.
He doesn't say that. He just says, oh, he's definitely guilty. So, okay, why?
Yeah.
definitely guilty though. And is this how police investigations work? They just ask the last person that spoke to the suspect and say, "Oh yeah, he probably did it then."
Yeah, how you doing? What are the vibes? We haven't lost the end of that text because it's underneath the.
Oh yeah,
presumably
you're
that's
right.
it.
It's under the button. Let's say yes. Why do you think the suspect is guilty? The victim is certain he's guilty. I have found evidence which suggests... I found evidence. Could you show it to me? No.
Did we have
At this time of year. Localized entirely within your hospital. They are saying it is very urgent. Okay. Just thought I should warn you of something. I'm pretty sure you've been recording some incorrect test results for patients here, and I'm sure there's some evidence here somewhere. That murder suspect goes free. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
Are we going to find like stolen syringes of medicine or something, and the suggestion is that this is a murder by poisoning or something?
I think it's more we didn't want to copy all of the test results down, so we lied.
Yeah, but isn't there? Yeah, so some evidence here. What about the murder or about?
No, just our malpractice. Again, remember we just made up a bunch of test results for no reason.
Yeah, true.
So let's just destroy that. Nice of him to tell us, "Hey, I'm going to report you for malpractice because I bet there's evidence somewhere." Okay. Well, that's that taken care of. It's the nurse again. We need your help in the murder suspects. Entered a life threat. Why is the murder suspect in a hospital now that I think about it?
Yeah, there's usually on-site infirmaries, but like if someone is potentially dying, then it's more important to get them to a hospital.
I suppose so. But again, like, there's no context to that. Like, was he accosted by his potential victim? Like, how did they both end up in hospital? How did they both end up in the same hospital?
Yeah.
Some of these choices. Some of these choices
to take the temperature of the guy in bedroom 1, which is the murderer, and I don't think taking the temperature of the murderer is a particularly life-threatening injury.
Okay, so the other thing, we have to remember, this is not a creative writing course. We're not judging the quality of these stories. We're more judging the way that they are brought across through gameplay. So I was going to say this choice here is kind of interesting. What's our incentive for saying no? Because that feels like if I say no, we're just going to miss a chunk of content. I mean, maybe we're role-playing as a bad and lazy doctor, because we have been so far. But what's the reason that we would say no here? I'm gonna say no just to say. Oh, okay, so yeah, maybe we somehow didn't take a Hippocratic oath. And just say he's a murderer. I don't want to help because some guy said that he was definitely a murderer, and I believe them. Good. Gotta remove your bandages again. Let me have a chat. Oh, you're not talkative yet. Oh, nurse is calling again. Oh. Okay, I guess they're just going to keep asking us until we say yes. So that's one way of managing agency, I suppose. Ooh.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily create a particularly interesting choice. But,
press E to save life. And then press F to... spots will appear in random locations on the screen. Press 60 within a minute to save his life. Okay, get ready for some clicking.
Here we go.
Again, this is not what I would call, particularly complex mechanics, right? Clicking on some random things on a screen is... I'm not sure this is what doctors really do.
Well, mostly, whether it's a simulation of real doctor work or not, it's the same task 60 times, right? And like, if it's interesting the first time, it's probably not interesting the 10th or the 50th or the 60th time.
All right, I'm getting there. We're about 3/4 of the way there. We're 51/60ths of the way there.
Yeah.
It's close. I also need to take his temperature again. Oh, his temperature's coming down. That's what's a good temperature? 37's a good temperature, right?
Yeah.
Boss is phone. I don't think many people could have clicked on 60 things in 60 seconds. I was just doing my job after originally saying no to doing that. But you did ask twice. You've proved you're an excellent doctor. Because of that, we'll get a large raise. And we're not even getting fired for malpractice because we destroyed the evidence. Oh, the detective's phoning. I need to talk to you. When I interviewed you earlier, you pretended to have evidence. Oh yeah, you're right. I did do that as well. I don't know why I did that. Oh no. Okay. So that was an experience. Let's replay that and go for some different approaches. And while we do that, let's start talking about the marks criteria. So first off, presentation.
So we had said it's inconsistent. Certainly the graphics are a little inconsistent. There were some bits that we were quite happy with, right? A lot of the audio here is quite good. You know, we've got audio cues in the right place in a fairly interesting way. Truth be told, the most interesting bit of visual and audio cues were on that title screen, which was very nice. When we dropped into the main game, we've got heartbeats occasionally, I think is the main one.
I think I've done that thing where I've made a choice and it has just skipped a bunch of content because I've just said, I don't want to treat the murder suspect.
Okay. Yeah, we've seen a few little niggles with the presentation. We had that one point where the text cut off or was hidden by the buttons, but that's minor. I think we've got default fonts and things here. There's a few places where the art assets are really inconsistent with the icons for people compared to the 3D sprites of those people, and things like that.
Like, again, it's not the fact that everyone is made of capsules. In a way, that's kind of like an endearing, like, abstract, simplified art style. It's the fact that it doesn't gel with, like, the very, like, I don't know how to describe it, but, like, that particular cartoony AI-generated style. Like, if they're just taking a little screenshot of the capsule and used that as their profile picture in the phone, that would be a lot more consistent.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm finding it funny now that in a game about medicine, all the people are capsules.
So it's interesting that, actually, so having just said, oh, I'm worried that I'm going to miss out on a chunk of content because I've said no to the murderer, we've actually gotten a different dialogue from speaking to this patient. So, so it's not like it just removes content, or I guess it swaps content, but it's, yeah, it's again, it's we'll talk about this later, but it's not really an example of agency, right? Where there's no reason for us to say yes or no to any of those choices. Again, sort of minor inconsistency. Take off the bandages and the bandages are still on, which is a bit of a shame. Yeah, it feels like we're sort of around the satisfactory level, right? It's workable, it's effective, there's some inconsistencies.
Yeah.
But, like, obviously, you know, some of it's a little bit oversimplified. Like, we don't have a roof. The camera occasionally clips through some of the bits and pieces. There's records in here. Some of the text is particularly hard to read, actually. The fact that it's like black text means that when we're looking at a patient who's wearing black trousers, difficult to know that we can talk to them.
And likewise, some of the dialogue boxes are white dialogue boxes on white backgrounds.
And plus, the not just the profile pictures on the phone, but also the 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 aesthetics and information design of the little medical mini games are pretty wildly inconsistent with the rest of it.
This one here, certainly it looks like they've got a screenshot and just blown it up to the size of the screen, and then they've put vector graphics on top of that. Right.
So we're going to be here for a little while, so enjoy this scintillating content. So yeah, satisfactory?
Yeah, okay. Well, since you're on this screen, let me ask you about meaningful play.
Oh boy, I'm having such a great time playing this great game. So the mini games are extremely simplistic, but that's obviously not the major focus of this game. That is effectively busy work. And again, part of me is like, what an interesting take on it. Get the player to do something very boring and very annoying in order to incentivize them to commit malpractice.
Yes, we're being unfair and using this as an example of things that are not fun to do, when the explicit point here is that it's not fun to do it, therefore you take the shortcut.
I will say the other mini games are also not hugely fun, right? Click on 60 buttons in 60 seconds is, again, it's generating busy work, and again, that obviously wasn't the focus of what they're doing. It's more about like the narratives that they're trying to tell, but those particular bits are a bit could be more interesting, let's put it that way. So mechanically, our primary sort of interactions are wandering around and interacting with people and with items in the room, and then these mini games. So we do have a set of mechanics. I would say it's probably a simpler set of mechanics. Again, I'm trying to talk and do data entry at the same time. 27.6. And I could just do this and then destroy the evidence. Maybe I should have done that. But it's not... Like, the controls are fine. There aren't any bugs. It is simple. It feels like, I don't know, are we around like the satisfactory side of things here? What do you think?
Well, I guess looking at the mark scheme, if it's simpler game with fewer mechanics, usable controls is satisfactory. If the game we consider to be a simple game with few mechanics, maybe awkward controls, maybe serious bugs, then it's down at the pass level. All the way down at poor is insufficient mechanics. And I don't know quite where to put it for these game elements really are kind of lacking, but almost on purpose. And I'm not sure what to make of that.
Yeah, like certainly, again, like the data entry one does feel like it's a deliberate choice. The others feel like they're just sort of a bit shoehorned in to sort of it almost feels like they've sort of said, well, we need to make sure there's some game in this game, so we'll just have them click on a bunch of stuff at random. So it feels like it is sort of like what gameplay there is sort of overly simple.
So I suppose if we say the core mechanics really are the moving around and the talking to people, well, the talking to people certainly does what it's supposed to do.
Exactly.
Moving around, is a bit superfluous. Like a lot of these style of games, you could just have a big button in the middle that says talk to this person, talk to that person, talk to the other person. You could maybe at a push say that they're using the moving around to do things like tell the story of how the murder suspect and the victim are in different rooms, and this means that you hear different things from them and they're separated. There's some element of using the space there. So I guess I think there is some mechanics.
Here's a question, right? Yeah, what would happen if we went into the bedroom and we went over to the medicine box and it said press E to treat patient, and then we press E and the patient was treated?
Yeah.
Like, that would definitely be less mechanics. It might add, I'm not convinced it wouldn't be a better experience, but I do think, yeah, like they've included some things. I don't think it necessarily fully supports like everything they're trying to do, but I don't know. I'm torn between a pass and a satisfactory and a satisfactory.
Yeah, I think I would have been inclined to go between a pass and a satisfactory.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm leaning to. So let's go with that.
So now we've got to do story engine, and this is maybe where we're going to see some issues because the gameplay is so limited. We're going to have to figure out where does the gameplay influence the story, and then where does the story influence the gameplay.
So I would. So it's not always a perfectly clean distinction between saying, well, the dialogue bits are the are the story bits, and the everything else is the game world. But that might be how we can look at this one. So if we say game world to story, like that mini game where we can decide to get lazy and just use yesterday's results, definitely has an impact on the story.
Yeah. Do we need to actually try some of those mini games and fail them? Like
I don't
try and click on 50 dots. What's the outcome going to be of not doing that? Would we consider that actually to be a gameplay effect, or would that just be lack of skill?
Yeah, that's not. I'm making a choice about how I'm playing. That's just playing badly. In a way, the same with the temperature one, right? Like, so the person we take blood from, I don't think we can fail that. I think we just have to click on all of the dots to proceed. The temperature one, in theory, we could choose to put in a wrong value, and maybe that would have some impact. But that's not really a choice. That's just being very bad at reading a thermometer.
And the bandages, you are stuck until you just click on all the bandages. There's no choices there. There's no possibility of playing well or badly. It's not timed.
So a pass would be a few sparse or minor examples of where the game world impacts the story. Do we think it's there? Do we think it's maybe between... So a poor, for example, would be support for story elements in the game, but the game world has no real impact on the story. And it feels like it's definitely above that. So do we think it's between the two, or do we think it is hitting the pass?
Yeah, I think the good example is the malpractice bit, where clearly the story is impacted by whether or not you do take the shortcut on inputting the results or not. So I think I can say there's a few sparse examples there.
Okay. And then the other way around, story to game world. Do any of those sort of dialogue decisions affect the way we play the game? So they don't seem to change any of the mini games dramatically. In theory, if we get a phone call saying, "Oh my god, the murderer needs your help," and we say no, then we just get phoned back and said, "Oh my god, the murderer still needs your help." So in a way, that's like it has absolutely no impact on the gameplay at all. And
I think the mini games, we still see the same mini games. We still do all of the mini games. It's not as if you're limited on time. You can only save one of these two patients. Which one do you want to save? Right? So it would be something where you're playing different mini games depending on which path you're taking.
So the only example that I can think of is when we're speaking to the patient, where we've done a little bit of malpractice, and he says, "Aha! Well, I'm going to report you because there's evidence." Then we go to a room and we find the evidence. So it does change things very, very slightly, but it really does feel like we're more on the lines of there is support for story elements within the story engine, but it doesn't really have an impact on the game world.
Yeah, I think some of the obvious ones here are that we have both a murder suspect and a victim, neither of whom tell us basically anything about the potential for the murder that would interact with us in a way that we could do something with the detective. Right? It's not obvious that the wounds that were inflicted on the victim match or deliberately don't match with the items that the murderer suspect is carrying with them or something.
Okay, that's interesting. Bit of a sort of split join. So we can initially refuse to treat the murderer, but then we get his doctor reported for malpractice. We get the option again.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. It seems more like a story to story effect rather than story to game world or game world to story.
Let's deliberately fail this one and see if it has an impact. Again, this would be game to story, which we've already talked about, but it's always good to see some extra little bits. So this is kind of interesting. How do you feel about the agency, like the richness of choices? Because I have some thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, I think my thoughts are broadly that the way it's presented, they seem to be choices between play the game and don't play the game. Like the first decision you're given is, would you like to treat this patient or not treat this patient? And as you mentioned before, if you say you don't want to treat this patient, it sounds like you just don't participate in that bit of the game. And then later it comes back with, would you still like to not treat this patient? Like, we promise you, if you treat this patient, there's a game to play here, which isn't really a rich or a interesting choice. Well, maybe the interesting bit that comes from that is that in one or two places, they seem to try and push the decisions are moral choices. Like, would you deliberately like to refuse to help a person who is suspected of murder? And I'm not convinced that they lean hard enough into that to really tee up those decisions in the mind of the player. The player gets the would you like to continue the game or not dialogue, when what I think these students want us to feel are the someone needs to help this murderer. Are you willing to be complicit in helping this murderer if they're a murderer?
This is kind of interesting. So again, the gameplay is affecting the story, so making those choices affects the sort of ending we get. But yeah, going back to the sort of agency, yeah, my thoughts sort of align pretty much with yours. What was I going to say? Yeah, most of the choices seem to be: do you want to play this bit of the game or not? Some of them, and again, I'll go back to the boring data entry one. Like that one, kind of is an interesting take on like the moral aspect. You're told to do this thing. You should do this thing. It is the moral and right thing to do this thing, but it is really boring and a lot more hard work than just pressing the button that says skip it. And there are consequences to that later, and then it drags you into a even more murky thing of, well, now there's evidence of this bad thing you did, so do you want to do another bad thing to get rid of it? That sort of plot line is, I think, the most interesting sort of branch through their story, which is a shame because, like you say, there's a lot more they could have done with the murderer and the victim. And in fact, I don't know if we've let's see if we can sort of have a look at that branch line as we keep sort of talking about the rest of it. Because
I was going to say, even as an example, if we use the data entry as an actually good example of the weird decision making there between the simple task but the boring task compared to the skipping it, the other mini games don't have that, right? Like, you could have the version of the thermometer where either it's exactly the same, use yesterday's result, or something, a complicated game that you can shortcut, and the same with the bandages, and the same with the taking blood, right? Like, if the taking blood one was, you should take blood from all of these points, but you only need to take blood from one of them, and you can shortcut it if you want. Those would be kind of reinforcing those decisions. It's probably true that for those to actually have a meaningful effect on the gameplay, there has to be something pushing those decisions, like a timer, to say, you need to get all these done by the end of the day, and time is running out. Which of these are you going to shortcut?
yeah, and kind of like the sort of murderer dialogue. Again, there's a lack of sort of context seemingly at the minute where we have like the murderer saying, "Oh, I'm being framed, but I don't know by who or what or why," and we have this patient saying, "Oh, yeah, they're definitely guilty, but I don't know why." And maybe that's, you know, setting up a mystery and it will pay off by the end of the game. But it's like it feels a little bit strange.
I feel like it's sort of tugging in a couple of different directions. There's sort of three main directions. There's the question it's dancing around of, would you like to help a person suspected of murder? There's the related question of, do you think this person really is guilty of the murder? And there's the third bit, which is the you have a boring job, do you want to do your boring job or not? And all of those things could be tied together, but I feel like this game mostly presents them kind of separately. You do a bit of job and you decide whether you're doing your job or not. You do a bit of talking to the murderer and seeing if you believe them, and you play or don't play the mini game that keeps the murder suspect alive.
Like this bit in particular, for example, like we've just found evidence that the murderer actually isn't the murderer. Do we want to destroy the evidence or do we want to keep the evidence?
Yeah.
Like why we have no incentive to destroy this evidence. Like that's what a lot of the choices in this game are missing, is like incentive to well, I was going to say to do the wrong thing, but to do either of the things, right? And which is why it's really interesting that the boring data entry minigame is the one that has the most incentive to make a choice. So it feels like, so a poor would be there are few choices and agency is problematic. Elements of this hit that, because again, a lot of the choices that we're making are devoid of context or consequence, or devoid of context at least. But some of them are like kind of interesting, and I do genuinely like the one that is, it's set up like through gameplay, and it's you know, you're told to do one. It's not like a pop-up shows that says do the boring data entry job or fake it. You actually have to do the boring data entry job, or you can fake it, and that's kind of an actually really nice choice in that. So that might put it up closer to the pass level of, you know, there are some choices, but a few of them are interesting.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Okie doke. And pacing. How do we feel about the pacing?
So it is true that, you know, we've just got a call, and sometimes we get calls, and this sort of drives the story forward. So there are some things that push the narrative forward, and that comes with some ascending pacing. I'm not sure to what extent the stakes are set up at the beginning. Like, because they seem to be doing 2 or 3 different things, it's not clear whether this story is running towards an ending where the patient lives or dies. Is it running towards an ending where we go to court and testify and find out whether this guy is innocent or guilty? Do we end up with an ending where we go to court and we're being accused of malpractice? None of those things are driving in a strong enough way to be sure that the story has that clear direction. So I would say the pacing is ascending, but it's maybe a little bit incoherent.
Yeah, and I would say actually in a lot of ways we're constantly going back and doing the same tasks over and over.
It is true that we play the exact same mini games a few times, and they're not at all different when we go back and do it again.
In a way, there is a dramatic climax where the murderer almost dies. We're not quite sure how or why. I was going to say cardiac arrest, but I don't think the treatment for that is clicking on them 60 times. And again, that sort of climactic moment is kind of undercut by how dry the associated mechanic is in a way. So I think you're right. There is some ascendant pacing, but a lot of it feels a little bit like incoherent in a way. So I would say we're maybe between a pass and a satisfactory.
Yeah, that's what I would go for as well.
Techniques. So what techniques do they use to convey the story? I would say primarily, again, it's through dialogue, right? So dialogue with the different NPCs, whether that's in person or over the phone. They could have done something where they convey... So what am I trying to say? A few chunks of this, it's a case of go to the evidence room and pick up the piece of evidence, and then we get a dialogue pop up saying, the evidence says this, the evidence proves that they're guilty, or the evidence proves that they're innocent, or this is evidence of you doing a bad thing. Another technique that you could have used to convey some of that story is by actually showing the evidence and making the player work it out.
Yes, if there was more of the mystery and solving it was part of the game, then that would be a mechanic. I was thinking that with these things where you've got evidence of your malpractice or of the murder, they just happen to be sitting there in the room. There could have been more in the sense that someone has deliberately hidden this piece of evidence or something, and then it becomes relevant that there's a spatial component. You really do have to search around because the story is telling you that it has been put somewhere specific. I'm vaguely interested to know what happens if you put random numbers in this form. Like, presumably it's malpractice, but it's different to using yesterday's results malpractice.
It's a different kind of malpractice, but I bet they don't differentiate between them. Okay, so
I assume also that those text boxes are restricted to numbers. Like,
nope.
Can you? No. Okay. So I guess just anything that isn't the perfect input is malpractice. But if you put the number 2 TWO compared to the,
I'm pretty confident that would count. That would not count.
It's just gonna be a complete pattern match. Interestingly, I think the bottom entry here says 2 millimoles per liter, and in the previous run it was -2 millimoles per liter. That might be a minor bug.
The numbers have definitely changed.
Oh right, it's just random numbers. Sure.
Yeah. So they've used one game writing technique, and I think it's successful. We've mostly understood the story that they are trying to tell. I think there's maybe more effectiveness they could have done with it.
Yeah, I think particularly for the vibes of the game that they're trying to go for here, it's a shame that they didn't consider using in media res, because the idea that you start operating on a patient or something, and then you get a call that says, stop what you're doing, go do this other thing, is quite a dramatic start point. That would be quite an effective technique for this story specifically. But what they do have is one successful technique.
Okie doke, which moves us on to the last bit. I'm going to see if I can drag this out a little bit, just so that we definitely get to the end of this run-through. But the last bit is feedback. So what feedback did they get from the feedback lab sessions, and how have they addressed it?
Right, so they say, in the design of our story, we plan to include a twist at the end of the game. The murder suspect turns out to be innocent. We were warned. This is a thing you need to do carefully. Strike the balance between not informing the player at all, but also don't give it away entirely. So they tried to hint subtly at the twist through some of the dialogue as they went through, and put in a few places where you can discover some evidence that points towards the murderer being innocent but is ambiguous. Then they say the key decision at the end of the game is whether to save the murderer's life. We were warned it may be an obvious decision to save the life. We incorporated a story element where the player gets blackmailed by a victim of the murder suspect if they made any errors in minigames, which I suppose is supposed to tie into the whether you want to save the murder suspect or not.
But here's the thing, right? Yeah, if saving his life or ensuring that he goes to jail was, adding that incentive of, the other patient is blackmailing you to do their dirty work, again, adds that extra sort of moral dimension. But then they kind of undercut it with where you just go into the evidence room and destroy the evidence.
Yeah, like, it might even be more interesting to say, do you get to save the life or not save the life of the person who's accusing you of malpractice, right? If you're willing to let this patient who is suffering die or suffer more, then maybe they won't be in a fit state to accuse you of malpractice anymore. Like, that's a moral decision. Didn't quite see the tie-in between the evidence of blackmail and the choice to save the other person's life.
Yeah. So, okay. So, were there any other bits of feedback that they mentioned?
They also said, when deciding the game's outcome, it was pointed out to us that the main storylines might appear to disregard the player's early decisions. If the player initially dismissed the patient's complaint, therefore some storylines end earlier without reaching the final peak, so players can replay the game to reveal more information and learn how their decision influenced the game. I'm not quite sure if that's landed.
I was going to say, so what did they do about that? Because that just says, and then the player can play again if they want to.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing from it.
Yeah, okay. So that one, well, I was going to say has less impact. It sounds like they've not done anything for that one, so let's consider the others.
And the final bit, they say the final minigame has been made quite easy, so it's possible for the trackpad user to complete it. This sounds like they had a friend play it on a trackpad and got frustrated with it being hard. I would say we had the opposite experience. It was far too easy and dull and not really interesting gameplay.
Yeah, agreed. So I think overall, yeah, the feedback has been addressed, but the changes have had limited success.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at.
Okie doke. So that brings us to the end of this batch. So thank you very much for watching, and we will see you another time for another video.